Hey everybody, it's me, Wambu, your wonderful host from coast to coast, not to boast. And on my show, So Good It's Sad, otherwise known as So Gas, we're gonna talk about Excitebots Trick Racing, a game that is so good that sad no one ever heard of it. Let's dive in, shall we?
Hey, Vince, what the heck are you doing?
I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm Wambu.
The name isn't even right. It's Wamboo, not Wham Ghost. Cut the crap, Vince. Cut the crap.
Whatever do you mean, Mr. Wambu?
Look, you're just wearing a sheet.
Oh no!
Vince, what are you doing?
I wanted to talk to you about a game.
A game? What game is it?
Dark Void.
Dark Void. Isn't that the game where, things happen?
Yes, it is. But unfortunately, it got very middling scores. And that got me to wondering, was it a good game or a bad game that was actually good?
That is a good question.
Indeed it is. So now I want to play the game and find the problem to my solution.
Okay, let's do it, Vince. Duty howdy everyone, Wamboo here, and today we're looking at a more unorthodox installment known as Dark Void. Here with me today is resident bad butt, Fawful TheLEGO, who not only introduced me to this game, but also knows way more about this dead franchise than anyone really should.
Hello everyone, I'm Fawful TheLEGO, stop motion animator extraordinaire.
Well, Vince, since you know so much about it, would you care to share the history of the game?
Sure thing! It all started as a concept from Capcom to make a shooter game for the PlayChoice 10, an arcade game that implemented dual screen technology in the 80s. Unfortunately, the system became short-lived, thus canceling the game. It remained in limbo for decades until the advent of the DSi, where it could see new light as a downloadable title.
Was any of that real?
Yes! Jimmy Fallon was there to prove it. He was a playtester.
Okay, now I know it's fake.
Alright. Honestly, I know very little about Dark Void. I've been meaning to get into this game for quite some time after I played its sister game, Dark Void Zero. Most critics consider that version to be better, despite it being an 8-bit game.
Jeez, that's gotta burn.
Yeah, exactly. Otherwise, there's not really much I know about. Truth be told, I think I discovered Dark Void on accident while looking up music for Zero back in 2011. Then I saw the Zero punctuation review, and then I stayed away from it for years. But I still had a morbid curiosity of what the game was like. Free-range jetpack flight. Freedom to tackle a situation. That was interesting to me.
Fast forward 5 years, and now we're finally going to answer Vince's age-old question. Is Dark Void hilariously bad? Does it stand firmly upon its merits? Or does it, suck? Let's dive in, starting with presentation. So Dark Void's presentation is very, what's the word? Unremarkable.
Amazing.
Oh good, we disagree already. This is going great so far.
I personally think this is a very beautiful looking game. The backgrounds, textures, and lighting elements are just a spectacle to look at. It's very rare that you'll see other games use rustic colors so gracefully. Or maybe that's just a Nintendo fan experiencing something other than blue or green all the time.
Okay. Vince, buddy, pal, friendo, have you played any games from 2007 onwards? In terms of color scheme, lighting, and overall visual style, Dark Void really isn't all too distinct. I suppose it's not terrible, but certainly not impressive either. The environments aren't too standout, the animations are ever so slightly stiff. I was thinking maybe it looked good for its time, but this game came out in 2010, and maybe I just have a high bar, but I can think of several games from the same year, or even a couple years before, that were way more ambitious with this kind of style, including Uncharted, the game Dark Void is clearly trying to be.
There isn't a single aspect of the presentation you find to be interesting, at all? I mean, what about the outer environments, though? Personally, I like everything, for you see, I am Vince.
Yeah, I guess, to be fair, there are some genuinely neat set pieces that work from both a visual and gameplay perspective.
Oh yeah? Well, wow. Boo! I think you're a genuinely neat set piece.
Oh. Thanks?
No problem.
Anyway, I do appreciate that the most grand areas are actually experienced through gameplay rather than through cutscene. The praise does start to disappear more towards the back half of the game though, particularly with the alien labs where the design looks boring, samey, and unbearably contrived.
The alien labs never bothered me personally. When you really think about it, aside from yourself, no one except the Watchers themselves are capable of moving to and from in their labs. Perhaps this is an anti-escape measure for the imprisoned humans? Ever thought about that, Wambu?
I mean, I guess? I don't know. Whenever I go through it, I just find myself thinking, oh, it's a good thing this place is structured in such a confusing way, or I'd never be able to do any of this.
Actually, these guys remind me a bit of the Drudge aliens from the Conduit. Ever heard of it? It's a nice FPS for the Wii. Good game. Shame about that ending, though.
Well, how'd it end?
It kind of didn't.
Huh.
Well, Broderick, I would be pleased if Adams did not cut my pension plan by 5% each year.
Say, Wambu, how do you feel about the characters' design? I personally think they're pretty alright. I have this issue with the hair textures. It kind of feels a bit slapdash and lazy, which makes me appreciate a Tem here all the more. You don't have to ruin something that isn't there.
I'd have to agree for the most part. I wouldn't say they're the most remarkable thing ever, but they all look pretty okay. To quote Yahtzee, the main character in particular looks like Nathan Drake with a B.J. Blazkowicz jacket. But you know what? It gets the job done, it looks fine, so whatever.
Personally, I like the design of the alien enemy force. I love how the light comes out of their body armor. It's really interesting to see that they're actually slimy little reptiles manning a robotic suit.
I think I can agree with you on that as well. I mean, it's not the most original thing ever, but yeah, it's interesting, it's cool. Thumbs up.
But honestly, I think the colors work just as great on DV0. It's such a nice, vibrant color scheme. Well, I'd say, overall, Dark Void's presentation is pretty great.
It's pretty meh.
Are you just gonna keep being difficult about everything, Ghost?
I mean, yes. Also, it's Wamboo.
Ramble bramble.
Close enough.
And now we move on to gameplay. And like with the presentation, we both have very mixed things to say about it.
Dark Void, for the most part, is pretty much what happens if you add a jetpack to a standard third-person cover-based shooter. The idea is to add kind of a sense of mobility and freedom to your conventional cover-based systems.
The other unique mechanic is the vertical cover system, which is kind of self-explanatory. It's a cover system, but on the vertical axis. It's actually executed fairly well since you can view each level from angles you wouldn't really be able to experience in other games. But, man, it gives a pretty wild sense of vertigo sometimes.
The jetpack actually has two modes: flight mode, where you rocket around at high speeds, and hover mode, where you can slowly ascend and descend without all the crazy momentum. For the record, you can activate both of these modes anywhere, even in areas that very obviously aren't designed for flight mode, and it's just wonderful.
There are some segments specifically designed for flight mode, however, as the game has quite a number of dogfights that basically require the constant use of flight.
Personally, I think these segments control horrendously. On a mouse and keyboard, it was almost impossible to control. It was definitely better with a controller, but even then, these sections just aren't designed very well. There's a lock-on system which allows you to keep sight of whatever happens to be nearby, but being locked on actually makes it harder to hit enemies, so you have to constantly switch between the views.
I, on the other hand, personally didn't mind the controls all that much. But then again, I seem to be the only person on the entire planet that likes Star Fox Zero, so maybe I'm just crazy. Now, unfortunately, while I find the core gameplay to be pretty good, there are still a lot of things that just feel incomplete. For example, there's only about 6 weapons in the entire game, and for one playthrough, you can only fully upgrade about 2 of them. Plus, the game takes away most of your weapons right at the end, so, I hope you upgraded the Liberator.
You know, I just noticed that some of the weapons sound like Nerf guns when they reload.
Yes. Yes, they do.
Another thing the game is lacking is a particularly noteworthy enemy pool, or, well, bosses. There are a few noteworthy battles like the Watcher Knight and the Archons, both of which are kinda short and become more abundant late game, but in terms of big, one-time boss battles, there's only one, and it's right at the end.
At the very least, the game functions pretty well for the most part. But unfortunately for the both of us, we didn't exactly get out unscathed in the ride.
There was only one thing noteworthy that happened to the both of us. In the first chapter of episode 3, you're going through an escort mission of sorts, and past the halfway point, if you happen to die here, you might just come upon an unending loop of mission failing before it even starts, forcing you to close the game and open it back up to get it working right.
Now, to be fair, it's an event that's fairly easy to avoid. My only guess as to why this happens is that the Ark reaches a certain checkpoint in critical condition and gets destroyed by bombs shortly after. It's no problem if you're attentive to the enemy bombs and the heavy hitters, but since it managed to happen to us in a similar fashion, it was something worth mentioning.
I'd say overall the biggest issue with the gameplay is that it just doesn't seem to have much of an identity. It basically takes a bunch of smaller elements from games like Halo, Mass Effect, and most notably Uncharted, right down to the Nolan North.
No kidding, huh? At least it knows how to take inspiration?
No, Vince. It just makes me want to play better shooter franchises.
Okay. How about those jetpack controls? They're pretty unique in one way, right?
Well, I guess so.
Yeah, it's got the jetpacks, the camaraderie, the option to choose the different vehicles, the aliens with bright saturated colors bent on assimilation. Oh no.
What is it?
Wambu, I just realized, you're absolutely right about wanting to play a better game.
Wait, really? What game are you thinking of?
One hint.
Star Fox?
More specifically, Star Fox Assault on the GameCube. I'm not saying it's a blatant ripoff, but there's definitely a lot of familiar ground. Right down to the third-person perspective, flight controls, and 3 difficulties.
Oh dear.
It's true what they say about Dark Void. As much as I hate to admit, the game has no identity.
Face it, you're either on one end of a Nerf weapon or the other.
And now, on to Dark Void's story, which is pretty...
Bad?
I mean, it's...
Bad, I believe, is the word you're looking for.
Well, like...
Vince?
Okay, it's pretty underwhelming.
Bad, Vince. Bad.
Ow! Ow! Stop! Okay. It's pretty bad, but not like all bad.
Well, this is where we get into the real shit. Wait. Shit.
Wambu!
Vince, why am I being censored?
Cause we can't use cuss words in the video. We can't use cuss words in the video, Wambu. We can't use cuss words. We can't in the video. Cuss words. We can't, Wambu.
Why not? I'm a sailor mouth in literally all my videos.
You don't understand, Wazbaz. If any of my family members catch wind of a video of mine with me swearing, the entire family unit will form a conga line.
Wow, that's pretty f***ed up.
Anyway, the game starts off in the void itself with a guy that is not our main character.
We're gonna call him Dead Man Vrooming.
Naturally, with the DMV, we're being instructed through a tutorial segment on how to fly using the jetpack. And I think this is a good way to begin. It's an incredibly new mechanic, and they give us a nice amount of room to practice in. After getting used to the controls, we get into a cutscene where the vrooming dead man, well, dies. Fast forward a bit, and we get introduced to the greatest character in the game, Cooper.
Not only is Cooper the absolute best character ever, but he's also...
Hold on, I'm gonna restart!
Well, look out! Pull out!
dead.
Movie? What about the plane? What about Cooper?
Will, please. Cooper didn't make it. He didn't.
Or so she says.
No. Our main character is actually Will Gray. He is very average as far as main characters go. He's basically got one of two emotions throughout the entire game. Mildly irritated and thoroughly bamboozled.
The sad part is that the character is played by Nolan North, one of the most lovable hams in modern voice acting. You look at any of his other works, and you can tell he's just absolutely loving his job. Here, save for a few moments, he sounds pretty checked out.
You're the courier. Well, ain't life strange?
I care so much.
Well, there are at least a few moments that let Nolan North play Nolan North.
Easy there. Are you alright?
Yeah. That was close.
Chapter 2 is rather basic for an introductory FPS level, but it gets the job done.
Definitely. You get introduced to the world. There's uncertainty everywhere with the dead soldiers. And you and Neva get separated early on, ending off with a battle with alien mooks, led by an even stronger variation wielding my favorite weapon, the disintegrator. Say goodbye to all those pesky worms with this awesome gun.
Brought to you by Cooper.
Whamley, please. Cooper didn't make it. These aliens are called Watchers, by the way, and their goal is to take over the Earth, because apparently the Earth once belonged to them, and then the human slaves rebelled and took it over themselves, and who really cares? They forced Cooper to not make it, so they must die.
Moving on, we come across a town in a chapter that's completely pointless.
Why does Chapter 3 exist at all? You go to the town, you talk to two people, that's everything you do there. They could have made this a cutscene and there would have been no difference.
But we do, however, meet Tavi, who wants to help us get out of this big mess and get a plane to fly us home. And this is where we get introduced to the game's historical icon. This is Nikola Tesla. Like, actual, real-life Nikola Tesla.
How's this thing work?
What's the sense in telling you something you can discover for yourself? Take a leap.
And he sounds like the Colonel.
Sanders?
No, Vince, Roy Campbell.
From Full Metal Alchemist?
No, Vince, from Metal Gear Solid.
Oh! That's what Otacon's real name is.
Vince!
Well, here we finally get reintroduced to the jetpack controls. It's a lot more expanded, with a hovering ability introduced, as well as the previously established flight mode, gained a little bit later on.
Continuing on, you finally get to enter the Void, because Will here has a choice between saving his ex-fiancée or going home, and since he couldn't fix the plane, he takes on to Plan B. What a brave and valiant protagonist, everybody.
Never knew you cared.
After Tavi gives you the spiel on the controls, you have to destroy some towers by destroying the controls from the inside, doing some minor dogfights, and saving some survivors. Thus bringing us to episode 2, where we meet a couple of nice characters. There's Atem, who serves as a rival figure, as well as the guy that gives out exposition on the Watchers. There's Red, who you hear on the radio more often than face-to-face conversations. And look! Tavi's back!
Is Cooper back?
Wombubger, please! Cooper didn't make it.
Then they are not worth my time.
At the end of Chapter 2, we have to make our escape, as the Watchers have discovered our location, and they're not holding back. It's actually kind of tense trying to keep the Ark from getting destroyed, despite it not being too challenging.
You know, now that we're going through this again, I'm debating whether or not this even qualifies for being so bad it's good. I mean, we've gotten a few riffs here and there, but nothing super hilariously bad. Everything's just kind of okay or mediocre in terms of gameplay and story progression.
Well, I'm glad to hear that you liked episode 3 then.
Ah, crap. Yeah, nope, never mind. Scratch what I said earlier. This game is a train wreck.
Oh, I told ya.
Ladies and gentlemen, let me write down a list of everything that goes wrong in this final third of the game. It's stupid, it's lazy, it's so insulting to ever exist in this game and any other game before it.
Whoa, 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 whoa. Take it easy, Wambu. Don't you think that's going a little overboard?
Vince, you wrote that line, and you made it grammatically incorrect, might I add.
What have I done?
First, we got the battleship at the end of Chapter 3-1. There's no build-up, and it gets destroyed in a really dumb way. By shooting its bomb guns, going on the controls, and shooting the thermal cores a grand total of once.
Then, there's the Collector, which shows up all of a sudden, it eats you, and then gets destroyed in an even dumber fashion. I didn't even think that was possible. You shoot the acid pores to not die, and then you shoot its stomach until he unlives.
And then after that, we get bombarded with pointless moment after pointless moment, gradually getting stupider as you go through the chapters. Speaking of, let's get back to Nikola Tesla.
Alright, this guy plays an important role in both games of the series. In DV0, he's the guy who's responsible for all the tech and armor used for the soldiers to even survive in the Void, and he serves the plot as Rusty's close friend and navigator.
In Dark Void, it's relatively the same thing. However, he shares no connection with Will Gray, and only serves to give you cool cool stuff and rant occasionally. Initially, he's definitely more involved, but then he gets treated as a throwaway character. And that's even more apparent for Colonel Tesla over here, because he gets straight up assassinated by an odd duplicate of himself. That's right, in this game, Nikola Tesla is killed by another Nikola Tesla, almost out of nowhere. It kinda makes...
Hold everything.
What is it?
I have the perfect clip as a response to this exact scenario.
Lolly lule lo, lolly lule lo, lolly lule lo.
Colonel, snap out of it! Colonel! Colonel!
Wow, that's... Wait, how long have you waited to use that?
It's funny because it's a Twin Snakes joke. That's Metal Gear 2, right?
Do you even know what a PlayStation is? But like I was saying, there's next to no impact with this death scene, as it barely gets touched upon by anyone else.
And if you thought that came out of nowhere, let's talk about forced item loss. In the next chapter of episode 3, you get captured by Watchers. You'll lose your guns and jetpack. This would keep the games from stagnating if it was a chance to use the really cool weapons like the gravity gun or the Tesla coil, but those little doodads only got to be useful once in the main game. I mean, it would have been great to use in the main story again, but no. It's basic gunplay once again. Rip in peace, single-use weapons. Rip in peace.
And finally, we have Bubsy the Dragon.
The orders were pretty clear. Look out!
What could possibly go wrong?
Okay, it has an actual name, but the Dweller is such a stupid name that even Bubsy sounds more dignified.
Not to mention he's featured on box art of the wrong game.
He's the final boss. He basically only attacks once a decade, and even then, they're super easy to avoid. Seriously, there's barely any challenge to this guy. He goes down easy peasy. Kick his butt. Throw a rocket in there while you're at it.
And then we get to find out that the second Nikola Tesla isn't actually Nikola Tesla, and he throws a knife into Ava's back. She loses so little blood that she has to stay in the void and die. This is actually very sad and a tearjerker, because we got to see their heartwarming wedding proposal 3 years ago, where Will Gray is still wearing that jacket, only to be crushed by a heartbreaking scene of their breakup where Will Gray is still wearing that jacket.
There's some nonsense in there about how Will is the chosen one and he's the only one that can go back to the human world, so rest assured this phoned-in sacrifice was definitely completely warranted. But, question, did Will Gray even do anything? Like, for the humans, I mean? 'Cause there's nothing here to explicitly state that the Watchers are all dead or anything, so theoretically the war should still be going on, right?
But Wambu, do you care?
Not really.
We end off on a thought-provoking scene where Will is told to accept his losses and move on with his life by none other than a Tem in his fancy new suit, while Will Gray is still wearing that jacket.
And then Will decides, you know what, Ava kinda sucks, so he throws her ring into the river and the game ends.
Will, please. Cooper didn't make it.
I didn't edit that in.
Me neither.
So, does that mean Cooper made it after all?
No.
He didn't.
Hey, Vince, isn't that the main theme of Dark Void Zero? Vince? Where'd you go?
So, now for the final verdict.
Honestly, there's not much here in terms of genuine badness for the first two parts of the game. The final book, however, just took a nosedive. And from there, let's list the bad. We have somewhat shaky level design, mostly unremarkable gameplay, unbalanced weapon practicality, forgettable characters, a lack of identity, barely any boss fights, and an overall incomplete experience.
Personally, I think this is a game that's so good, it's sad.
Okay, you can't just make things up, Vince. That's dumb. Like your mustache.
No, I'm serious. It's a guilty pleasure. This is one of those games that has glaring flaws as far as the final part of the game goes, but none of this has gotten me to put it down either. It's kind of in the same boat as Zelda 2 or Croc 2. Wrong one. There we go. Not really special as a game, but there's just enough pizzazz and new things to learn about it. I never even knew about certain things like the lock-on system until playing it alongside Wambu here.
I don't really see it. I'll admit the jetpack did make for some entertainment, and the nosedive the story took is just a wonder to behold, but I think too much of the game was just by the numbers for it to really stick out as a so bad it's good game. More than anything, I just kinda see untapped potential, but, you know, there's merit in that at the end of the day, in terms of being hilariously bad. It wasn't necessarily boring, but I've definitely played funnier games on the show, like Mega Man X7.
Wasn't that the first Mega Man to feature bass? One of the most epic anti-heroes in gaming to this?
Gosh darn it, Vince, not you two.
I give it a 6 out of 10.
I give it a 5 out of 10.
Let's meet halfway then. 65 out of 10.
This game is amazing.
Wait, did we do something wrong here?
Nah.
So, what do we do with the game now? Does Dark Void deserve to die, Wambu?
Yes.
Will, please. Cooper didn't make it. He didn't.